Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me for my virtual research proposal review presentation on non-human online persona. I am recording this to make it available on my blog as well as for the university. My name is Jasmine Connell. I am a PhD candidate and an academic tutor in communications and media at the University of Wollongong. I look into persona studies, fan studies, and game studies. I'm a graphic and web designer, and I'm also a video game and virtual photography enthusiast. I am currently seeking feedback on my research method or design and my literature review, particularly in the fan studies and concepts of the non-human. I did want to address that I do have a lot more material that I can speak to than what is included in this presentation. So if you have any questions or you would like to know more about anything that I speak about today, please feel free to email me at jasmine@uow.edu.au. In my thesis, I will be investigating if non-human entities can have an online persona. But so what? What makes this significant? My research proposes a comprehensive method to account for non-human online persona, which is a significantly underexplored area of persona studies with vast implications for both academia and the creative industries, most immensely for artificial intelligence. As we stand on the precipice of an AI revolution, it's integral to consider my holistic approach, which delves into the notion that an AI tool or any other non-human entity can formulate an online presence, and these can interact with individuals who are influenced by the technologies involved in curating them. So going beyond the predominant focus on jobs, intellectual property, education, privacy, and legal implications, my work addresses the broader repercussions of non-human online persona on the creative industry dynamics and philosophical discourse. The theoretical foundation for the project rests on the notion that persona is not merely a self or solitary entity, because it embodies a negotiation, a dynamic process between multiple parties that are actively involved in sculpting the online persona. And this is a phenomenon that cannot exist detached from a network of contributing actors. Yet persona studies literature is latent to theorize this line of thinking. By employing 3 distinct case studies, I scrutinized the implications of my theory in diverse settings, offering a rich analysis of non-human online persona as it pertains to arising forms of online entities, celebrities, and personalities. This endeavour not only fills a notable gap in the existing literature, but pioneers in advancing the collective dimension of online persona, transcending conventional discussions of it related to marketing, branding, algorithm, robots, institutions, and objects, to forge a deeper understanding of how emerging social media and AI technologies will foster human communication, engagement, production, and culture through dialogue and interaction between humans and non-humans that involves an online persona on both parts. My research is inspired by the intersection of my personal passions and academic curiosities. I have been engrossed in nerd fan cultures from a young age, as you can see from the images provided. And I found an intellectual home for these passions during my undergraduate studies, where I was introduced to the concept of persona by my now co-supervisor, Dr. Christopher Moore. And ever since, I have been investigating this concept of non-human persona through my honours thesis and subsequent article that was published recently in the Convergence Journal. But it wasn't until 2021, when I read Travis Holland's paper about the death of the Mars rover, that I experienced another scholar pondering the possibility of a collectively realised non-human persona. This re-inspired my focus on defining non-human online persona, leading to a research question inspired by Holland's query, can a robot die? And this is, can a non-human entity have an online persona? To answer this question, my research shifts the concept of persona from a performance of inner human consciousness to an online assemblage, which is a collection of digital objects. But before we delve into this, it is essential to understand what persona is. Persona is the performance and assemblage of the individual public self. The term is derived from the practice of donning prosopon masks in ancient Greek theatre to represent different acting roles, and this led to psychoanalytic and social role perspectives of persona made popular by Jung and Goffman. Due to shifting media environments towards what is called a presentational paradigm, our lives have become mediatized, and engagement in online identity formation is now an everyday practice. So persona is no longer just a social role, but a robust media practice inspired by celebrity identity formation techniques. Therefore, non-human persona is simply non-human things with this same capacity to engage in a public performance of self. And non-human online persona is non-human things engaging in such performances of the self online. And this is a phenomenon that has emerged within this shifted media context. So while the concept of non-human persona itself is not new, the idea of non-human online persona involves a new understanding of the self and non-human agency in our digital era. Non-human online persona might refer to things such as animals, robots, AI technologies, fictional characters, Vocaloids, virtual bands, or virtual influencers, and many more non-human entities. My particular investigation of non-human online persona highlights the involvement of human and non-human actors in the persona assemblage by focusing on an understudied area of persona, which is the collective dimension. And in this way, my research serves as a foundational work for future explorations of this phenomenon. And as such, it considers the context and conditions under which these personas come into being, the processes and practices involved in forming them, and the applications and implications of my research findings. In scope, my thesis examines several social media field sites between 2023 and 2025, and it does not examine offline forms of non-human persona, nor broader entertainment media. This may involve looking at specific versions of AI tools, such as Midjourney version 5. I am aware that rapid advancements in these technologies may outdate my research, but I instead consider it a temporal snapshot of the application of my theory to real-world cases in this given moment. And to mitigate these limitations, I do employ Bell's futurist approach in my concluding chapter to explore the possible, probable, and preferable futures of non-human online persona in various contexts, online and offline, across social media, the broader entertainment sector, and creative industries. My research aims to investigate if non-human entities can have an online persona by providing a comprehensive definition of the term non-human online persona, and this involves developing a theoretical framework for analysing this phenomenon, which future researchers can use to expand the concepts that I explore. I investigate 3 cases of non-human online persona in my thesis, which explore specific aspects of my definition and raise important philosophical questions about the nature of existing and the principles guiding our understanding of non-human personhood, such as: can a video game character have a persona outside of the game? Can a pet be an influencer? And can an AI tool have an online persona? These cases all explore the nuances of non-human online persona. So with the game case study, this looks at text and paratext and where the fictional character ends and the online persona begins. Whereas the animal case looks at the concept of non-human agency and demonstrates how these forms of persona utilize micro-celebrity, persona formation techniques. The artificial intelligence case study is an example of a persona with several black box elements. So a black box is something whose inner workings are not known or accessible, such as a social media algorithm. My thesis uses Butcher's 2018 book, If... Then, to investigate the obscured inner workings of non-human online personas, demonstrating how we can understand these assemblages despite any roadblocks that black box elements create. And across all of these case studies, I examine the role of the collective as crucial in co-creating the persona because we do not traditionally consider any of these entities as being able to have a self. To examine these cases, I employ a theoretical framework comprised of persona studies, fan studies, assemblage theory, and actor network theory. These all interconnect, but each have a distinct role. Persona is the foundation of the framework and provides key analytical concepts for examining persona, which I adapt for non-human online persona. Fan studies examines the audience's role in the co-curation of the non-human online persona and helps in understanding the distinction between text and paratext that is core to conceptualizing non-human online persona. Assemblage theory provides a framework to explain how non-human online persona is comprised and operates as a collective assemblage. And lastly, actor network theory is useful for mapping the networks of actors involved in the non-human online persona assemblage. For persona studies, I primarily draw on Marshall, Moore and Barber's 2020 book, Persona Studies and Introduction, which is a seminal text for understanding the analytical lexicon required to analyze a non-human online persona. I draw on wider contributions from them, which are listed at the bottom of this slide, as well as a breadth of research available in the Persona Studies Journal, of which I am an editor. I outline key concepts of persona in section 2.1 of my report, and I wanted to draw attention to the existing non-human persona literature today. Only a handful of these focus on the possibility for the collective formation of a non-human online persona, which I have put in bold and red. One of these is my own work on podcast persona, which was co-authored by Dr. Christopher Moore and published just a few weeks ago. My research addresses this gap in the literature. For fan studies, I draw on fandom identities and communities in a mediated world and a fan studies primer for a general understanding of fandom. I supplement this with a focus on participatory cultures, where I develop the work of Jenkins, Rassens, Jeanette and McLean, and Booth to examine the micropublics of a non-human online persona as a participatory media culture that contributes to the persona assemblage through the production of paratexts that sometimes involve textual poaching. By utilising a fan studies approach, I bridge another gap in the persona studies literature regarding connecting the collective dimension to the active role of audiences in online participatory communities. However, I do want to note that Christopher Moore's 2020 paper, An Approach to Online Fan Persona, does begin to explore this connection. So I will build on these concepts in my own work. I may also incorporate public audiencing, anti-fans, fan canon, and fan production into this approach in the future. Assemblage theory posits that complex systems and entities are a collection of relationships and interactions between their individual components. For this, I utilised Delander's 2006 approach to examine the distinct but overlapping nature of micropublic networks and employ this framework to explain the fluid, ever-changing nature of non-human online persona assemblages. I do apologise, I've switched my slide too early and I can't go back. But for actor network theory, I primarily use the work of Latour to consider the humans, non-humans, digital artifacts, social practices, and black box elements that comprise the non-human online persona assemblage. And A&T is a development of assemblage theory, and I utilise this to shift the focus from persona studies away from individual entities to consider the collective effort of several human and non-human actors in forming the non-human online persona assemblage. For my methodology, I use a triangulation of ethnography, case study analysis, and textual analysis. Ethnography is a portmanteau of ethnography, networks, and internet. It offers research practices for analysing the online social experience, which is precisely what is necessary for understanding the objects of this study. I employ a 6-step ethnographic method derived from Kozinet's 2002 framework and its adaptations in 2015 and 2020, incorporating nuances from Fuller et al. 2007. I do expand on this in section 3.1 of the report. For case study analysis, I use Merriam's pragmatic constructivist approach, which means that my cases are selected based on their relevance to my research question to provide a holistic description of non-human online persona. And this involves analysis guided by a theoretical framework that I develop through a literature review. I do take a multiple and a comparative case study approach, drawing on Goodrick's method to compare cases across contexts, analyse similarities and differences, and identify patterns within the cases. And Swanston and Holton argue that this increases the generalisability of my research and promotes a holistic understanding of the phenomenon. For textual analysis, I examine various non-human online personas as texts that emerge from a web of interactions across social media platforms, exposing a network of digitally visible relations. So far, I have looked at 2 foundational texts, which is McKee's textual analysis that offers a post-structuralist view that there are several interpretations of any text, and Faircloth's analysing discourse, which provides analytical language and frameworks for analysing texts by considering their surrounding discourses. I do also adopt Lundstrom and Lundstrom's approach to podcast ethnography, where I will explore, engage with, and then examine each persona as part of the textual analysis. These methods combine to form my research design that follows Kozinet's 6-step ethnographic process and incorporates various case study and textual analysis approaches within each individual stage. My data collection primarily includes both passive and participant observation on selected social media field sites and documentation via field notes, screenshots, and other recordings. These do carry with them several ethical implications, which I outline in section 3.6 of the report. To address these, I will submit an ethics application that includes defined protocols on announcing my researcher identity on chosen field sites, my research plan, which I showed on the previous slide, provisions for informed consent, and detailed criteria for citing and crediting participant contributions, ensuring their anonymity. My thesis will be organised into chapters that detail the introduction, literature review, methodology, 1 chapter for each case study, a comparison of these case studies, and then a conclusion that employs Bell's futurist framework. I have crafted quite an ambitious timeline for my research, including thesis production and findings distribution. Regarding my thesis production, I am partway through the development of my literature review and theoretical framework, and I have successfully passed my research proposal review, so perhaps I can switch that one to green now, which is very exciting. For my findings distribution, I do aim to publish once per case study and attend one conference per year. I am on track with this so far, with 2 publications and 1 conference presentation coming up next week. So I have published in the Encyclopedia of Heroism Studies, writing the definition of video game heroes alongside Dr. Chris Comerford. And I will be presenting my case study on video game hero persona at the upcoming Heroism Sciences Conference in New Zealand. I have also just published my first article alongside Dr. Christopher Moore. There was a publication error and they are currently fixing up the author order because my name should be first. But regardless, I did still want to share this. So this is my honours work on podcast persona in the form of a journal article that discusses Chris Lilly's podcast called Jamazing and considers the various elements that go into the podcast persona, as well as pondering the concept of non-human online persona. Since I am presenting at a conference next week, I thought I'd close my presentation today by expanding on the case study that I'm going to present. So the video game hero persona investigates where the fictional character ends and the online persona begins. It incorporates heroism studies into the theoretical framework, not just because of the conference that I'm presenting at, but because it is integral for understanding the heroic archetypes represented in Aloy's fictional character, and using these to compare to the virtual photography of fans and how these reinforce or challenge the archetypes of the fictional character. Of course, in role-playing video games, characters are more than representations of heroic archetypes due to the player's agency to embody the character and enact these traits through their gameplay. And the participatory culture of virtual photography extends these agencies beyond the game's narrative in a demonstration of an online persona that is enmeshed with, but separate from, the game character. And by examining fan productions of Aloy from the Horizon series and comparing them to the game character, we can unveil insights into how the collective dimension of non-human online persona functions and how this assemblage is contributed to by fans. For example, in-game, Aloy embodies both masculine and feminine heroic archetypes in that she is stoic, physically strong, and a skilled fighter, but she's also on an inner journey towards self-discovery. The modification tools available through photo mode enable fans to engage in remix and textual poaching of these characteristics through their game captures, which may differ from the characteristics of the canon character. For example, feminizing Aloy in a way that the canon character is not feminized. And the collection of these fan productions is what forms the video game hero's online persona. And that's what makes this case interesting, because although it represents a singular non-human entity, being the video game character, it does not exist on one singular field site, like other cases such as the pet influencer. Instead, it is completely comprised of a network of paratexts. I'm particularly interested in the queering of Aloy because sexuality was never central to the game's narrative, but there was fan speculation that Aloy was queer, and her queerness was made canon in the downloadable content of Burning Shores in 2023. But as you can see from this slide, there is no existing research on this, so I aim to answer the question, what role did fans have in queering Aloy in Horizon Forbidden West through their development of her non-human online persona via virtual photography? In the thesis, I will cross-examine this issue in relation to either V or Ellie. V has some interesting discourse around trans characters with binary romance options, whereas Ellie is another example of a female hero with a mix of masculine and feminine heroic traits that is queer. So with Ellie, I'm interested to explore if there is a pipeline or a stereotype here about representing female heroes as queer in role-playing video games, because these are two of the most prominent heroes in the non-customizable protagonist space. So to summarize this case study, it has helped me define non-human online persona as something that is decentralized, because although it revolves around one identifiable non-human entity, no single node has complete control over this assemblage, reinforcing the importance of co-curation between various actors to form the assemblage, and subsequently emphasizing the importance of the collective dimension of online persona in this process. It has helped me develop the connection between persona studies and fan studies, because the virtual photography community is a participatory media culture. So this introduces several analytical terms that are useful for examining the phenomena that aren't currently employed in persona studies literature, such as textual poaching. And this also helps develop the properties of a non-human online persona, as we may be able to compare these to the properties of a participatory media culture as developed by Rassens in Computer Games as Participatory Culture. Lastly, this case study has provided insight into the need to distinguish between an entity and its online persona in a similar manner to how we differentiate between text and paratext and ourselves and our online personas. As many non-human online personas are based on existing entities, this is a very important consideration. That brings me to the close of my presentation. To summarize my research for you, I am examining the existence of non-human online persona to contribute an original definition of this term and establish the importance of the collective dimension of online persona, as this is an understudied area of persona studies. By doing this, I will highlight the intersections between persona studies, fan studies, assemblage theories, and actor network theory through my theoretical framework, and I will demonstrate applications of this theory through a triangulation of research methods that involves ethnography, case study analysis, and textual analysis. And I hope to look to the future to anticipate applications and implications of my findings about non-human online persona. That's all for today. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me, feel free to email me at jasmine@uow.edu.au. Thank you for listening.